Hi, today we're going to talk about my favorite 5 native Bitwig plugins that aren't like super obvious. Not super obvious, but I try to pick ones that might not be used too much, although there is a delay and reverb in here just because like they are so good. So, and these are like on the side of like the most practically, the most practical ones that can be taken very far and are just very good for what they like are versus like if you compare it to like literally any other DAW. Like, so first, I'm not going to order this list by anything like specific, but these are basically my 5 here, with bit 8 being this one. And I'm going to basically go through these one at a time, and I'll be quick, but yeah. So first we have the delay. So the delay by default sounds like this. There's a rate and detune option, which allows basically like one signal's delayed and then the detune is like the pitch difference. So that is a option you can have for making your, say, like your ping pong or your delay like a little more like that, so like it gets a little more stereo faster, so it fits in the background more. And what's cool is, again, it has this device nesting, which is like basically in every Bitwig plugin, but the amount of possibilities this device nesting adds basically eliminates the whole like needing a send track to do this specifically, and then it technically makes delay 2 the most like advanced delay on the market, technically, because of what you can do with it. So that's really cool. But in the plugin itself, you have a mono left-right basically, and you have 2 like feedback oscillators with cross feeds, and they even have offsets, and they go up to 16ths, or they can do hertz up to like I think 30,000. 5 seconds, sorry, 5 seconds. Like so, it's not in hertz, but you have 1 to 16 bars, or sorry, one full like every bar, and then you have like the halves, thirds, fourths, all the way up to 16ths. And then you have a high cut and a low cut built in, a width for how far the difference is going to be. So like how opposite is the right going to be from the left, and like so basically how far is it going to be panned. And then you have your, again, those rate and detunes. So then you can end up with basically ping pong. Again, unfortunately though, you can't get the vibrato rate down to like 0, so there is going to be a delay, and they will eventually meet up and start phasing, which is kind of annoying, but it's like whatever at the same time. The high cuts and such allow you to basically mix your delay before doing anything to them, and they're with very simple knobs that actually give you the place that the cut is being made, like in terms of frequency and the hertz, and even in the pitch, which is quite cool. On to reverb. The reason why I like this reverb so much is because, well, you can get 30 seconds of reverb time out of it, which is actually longer than like a lot of plugins. Like FabFilter Pro R can only get maximum of 20 seconds of delay. So that's kind of cool. It's like a multi-band delay too, with how it has these separate bands set up with the crossovers. So you have very basic control over like essentially the low and the high times on a multiplication factor compared to the total reverb time. You have a tank FX, which is essentially like you can use it with an EQ to determine what frequency specifically will be like more reverbed than others. And then you have a wet effects, which lets you like essentially only affect the wet section. So again, you can basically cut out all of your low stuff or high stuff right out of the plugin itself without having to have a send track. And you can put phasers or anything, like more reverbs in here, all sorts of things. Again, making this reverb like one of the most advanced reverbs that can be offered with just the stuff that you can do to it, aside from the already quite nice like built-in features that it has. And unlike, say, like Ableton's reverb, the sound quality of Ableton's reverb compared to this, I would say this one's a little better. Or if you compare it to like Fruity Reverb, and Ableton, they both have more customization. But what's bad about having too much customization is that it's like unappealing to use the plugin sometimes, whereas this one is very simple. You really only have to mess with this reverb time. Longer reverbs might have more buildup, and shorter ones might have less buildup. You can control room size with a percentage. You have hall or room, and then there's a pre-delay, which can go up to 100 milliseconds, and a mix and width knob again, so how opposite the left and right is going. And these two device nesting options are like irreplaceable in any other reverb, in my opinion. Bit 8 is very nice because by default, if we listen to it, we can move around multiple knobs with just one little macro. It's already pre-macroed and set up with a gate, and then you can control the quantize and the frequency with the height and where you move it on the spectrum. So that is very convenient. Has a mix knob, a width knob, and it even has a built-in gate, and then it has the jitter control. And then again, it has a wet FX, so you can do whatever you want to the whole 8-bit stuff. If you want to add distortion, if you want to EQ it, if you want to compress it, gate it, or make it like fade, you can do that really easily. The flanger is like unlike anything I've ever heard before. The amount of strength that this flanger can carry is unreal. So I have some ambience. You can get ridiculous stereo wideness out of this. If I put on wide, it basically does opposites in both ears, making like 100% panning, like insured, and then the width at this point just turns up the stereo. So you can get really, really stereo stuff. Sorry, my ears are very sensitive. I've spent like 10 hours recording and doing music today. Can't handle this loudness. And then I have a time knob, and I can... So the time knob is basically like the controlling of the... It goes with this LFO factor, sort of. You can invert polarities. Mix it in. You even have a sample on hold. Quite a few like little options like built in. You have a restart trigger. And then the transient control. This is probably like one of my like just blown away plugin. Like this is just amazing what this thing freaking does. So you can have it be triggered by like MIDI or like audio. So it will basically trigger the envelope that you create here, sort of. Which is pretty sweet. In case you don't want it to like say trigger when like a kick is played or something. Maybe you only want it to trigger sometimes when you need the transient of the kick to really pop, but like other times it's fine if it doesn't really have that much of a transient. Or likewise, you could use it to reduce it, using sort of that same method. So what's very interesting about this transient control, and like let's for a second just compare it to say Transient Master, a $100 plugin. So this Transient Master has just an attack, a sustain, a gain, and then it has a limiter, and you can have a smooth attack or sharp attack, essentially. So there's like basically no option here to control the time of the attack, which is kind of weird. And then you can't even change between peak or RMS, and then you can't even have this trigger from like something else. You can't have something else trigger this. It just doesn't work like that. And there is no mix knob in case you want to mix in the transients that you're pulling in to get like some parallel compression. You can use this transient control for parallel compression, which again is quite awesome. So on this transient control here as well, which I don't believe the Transient Master does, is this actually detects transients. So if I play this sound, we can see it's detecting, it detects. So if I add gain, it's detecting where my transients are, and it's boosting all of these transients that are in this audio sample that it's finding. So there's about 3, and it's boosting about 3 times, like right at the start and then a little later. And like you can basically turn the sound into like so what I've basically done is turned it into sort of a gate. Like you can turn it into a gate and you can basically maximize peaks and then just destroy and minimize everything else. And likewise, you can reverse this so everything's all smooth. And you can like remove all the transients in it as well. It's kind of cool plugin. Again, there's an FX option, device nesting. It's great. You can even modulate things in here by attacks if you want. For some reason, Bitwig crashed. I'm not sure why. Might have been my computer. But as I was saying, in this FX section, you can put like filters or reverbs and all sorts of things. And then you can basically use this attack and or sustain. And then based on the parameters set, you can have it modulate like reverbs and stuff. So you could actually use this as a form of sidechain where your device input is your like drums. And then basically transients will do things like duck reverb or duck volumes, and you can basically put these like the FX in here, or have the sustain connected to a snare's like reverb tail. So you basically like lower the reverb when your snare comes, hits, you like fade in the reverb and then it fades out again. So then that way you don't have to like gate it, and then it controls the reverb much more. Which is cool. So not only does this device like very effectively raise and control transients and like energy of drums, it can also go the entire mile of doing all your like drum control as well. Like if you want to have use the transients to be related to like your EQs, so you can have dynamic EQs and having dynamic like reverbs, everything change based on the sound, like velocities and all that kind of stuff. You can do that with this transient control. So you have like a lot of control with transient control. That's why it's called transient control, because you're in control. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching.